Good afternoon, everybody. It is now the middle of September, which means it has been pretty much exactly 3 months since I had my total hip replacement, which I had at 35. I'm now 36. I had it on my right-hand side, posterior approach, based in the UK. And I've prepared a few questions just because this is a real critical milestone, the 3-month point. There was a lot I wanted to know at this point. So I've prepared some questions here. I realised I have not really put out an update in quite a little while, and I was being asked some questions by a few friends and family. So here's some things you might want to know. So first question is, how is your hip feeling at the 3-month mark? I would say pretty good. I don't really notice it now on anything day to day. I'm doing everything that I would normally do. I'm following the same routine. My sleep habits are good. The main limitations at the moment is I still can't go as heavy as I used to be able to at the gym. But I'm still going like reasonably heavy, like 120, 130 on squats and deadlifts. And my bench is basically as it has always been. That's kilograms, by the way. In terms of what exercises have you been able to resume and what weight? I'm basically doing everything in the gym that I would normally do, but the weight is less on squats and deadlifts. The deadlifts have been Romanian deadlifts, where you don't touch the barbell on the floor, you kind of keep it held. Next week we're planning to progress more to doing full deadlifts and seeing how that goes. Squats, the surgeon said, you know, maybe wait 3 months for my last appointment with them before I do low bar squat, where you put it lower down on your back and have a more bent over position. But he said doing other forms of squat where I'm more upright, like a high bar squat, front squat, or a safety bar squat, which you might have seen in some of my other videos, said that's completely fine. I'm still doing some accessory movements that kind of help build like the glute and the area, and I'm doing a few stretches and balance work and that kind of stuff, which you can see on some of my other videos. But yeah, I've just been really happy with how quick I've been able to get back into things. It's massively faster than I ever imagined going into this process, so I've been really pleased with that. Have there been any unexpected challenges or surprises during your recovery? There were some bigger surprises, just how fast the recovery has been. I think I went into this really strong, you know, so my prehab was basically on point because I was lifting heavy all the time. And I think because my gym routine, it's really helped with my rehab coming out of it. And I think having a positive mindset, a growth mindset aimed at this has just been real valuable. I didn't expect to have the groin setback at week 2. It took me a week of just having to take it easy, but that was not really a big setback really in the scheme of things. The other big surprise was I thought I was going to get pain in that joint. You know, they've cut all the way down it, down your glute. The scar's like that big. You can see some of the pictures on my blog post. I thought I'm going to be in like acute pain, like a sharp pain there, and it just never really happened. The only pain I really got was like soreness, like if you're sore from having trained really hard. That's all it felt like to me. How has your range of motion improved since the surgery? I would say the first month was really about getting range of motion back, and then after that month things were just about progressing. After that I've not really had any range of motion issues. I'd say if I grab my leg and pulled it towards me, I can feel tightness in the glute, you know, like that kind of glute stretch. I'm still having to work on that, but it's not the biggest thing is when you put your shoes on, because often I would put my right foot on my left knee to put my sock on, and for the first month to say 6 weeks, like that was a bit like trying to pull it on, and almost I didn't want to get like a dislocation event or anything like that, so I was mindful of that. Yeah, so but it's really good. Basically range of motion, I've been stretching, I've been doing strength exercises through range of motion and building them up, and that's really helped things to progress. And in terms of my daily weekly training routine, I'm training 3 times a week, maybe for 2.5, sometimes 3 hours a session. It's powerlifting though, so it's like 6 minutes rest between sets, and you end up, if you're going really heavy, you end up doing more than that, even though 6 minutes is probably plenty. How do you manage any residual pain or discomfort, if any? The only one I really had was around the groin pain, and I adjusted that. That was at 2 weeks. And I think it happens because that groin muscle on the inside, I think it gets used all the time and you don't realize it, and it's put under stress when you have the surgery. So I think it's almost like just overuse. It's not like, it doesn't feel like, oh, I've cut it or hurt it like that. It's like strain from overuse. So I adjusted my walk, put my knees together and tried to walk with just my knees without bringing my legs apart like that. And that really helped it to recover, but in a way that allowed me to still be able to get around the house and do things. That really helped me. So if you're in that position, worth doing, but don't allow your knee to internally rotate if you've had a posterior hip replacement, because that's how they dislocate it. What advice would you give to others at the 3-month mark post-surgery? What advice would you give to others at the 3-month mark? I think everybody's recovery journey is different. And I think you're going to be in two camps at the 3-month mark. You're either going to be still recovering and wanting it to go faster and being frustrated, or you're going to be going full steam ahead. And I think you've got to strike the right balance of how fast you progress with these things. Like, it's not a race, and you're kind of having to progress as fast as your body is going to let you. So like with my own recovery, for example, I've been very mindful that if I go too quick, I could set myself back. You know, I don't want to end up with a dislocation event. I don't want to end up injuring myself because I've tried to run before I can walk. So what I've been doing is, there's a concept in powerlifting called your RPE. It stands for rate of perceived exertion. So an RPE 10 would be I couldn't do another rep of a lift. An RPE 9 would be I could do 1. RPE 8 would be I could do 2 more when you stop. RPE 7 would be I stopped when I could have done 3 more reps. So in powerlifting, to try to do as much volume as you can, you try to optimize for that RPE. So most training sessions, I'm not training at an RPE 9 or 10 or whatever. I'm training at like an RPE 7. That's normal for me. So I think as long as I'm getting progression in the training, if I stay at an RPE 7, I know that I'm kind of training in a safe way and I'm not overstretching it. So I just applied like conventional wisdom in powerlifting to the recovery, and it's worked really well for me. How has your mental state and mindset evolved during these 3 months? It's really interesting, actually. I saw this whole experience really positively, and I was kind of looking forward to it, because I was looking forward to the improvements that were going to come as a result of me having the surgery done. And that was where my whole focus was. And because it was like novel and new, like I was going to go in the hospital, I got to wear these stupid pants. I got to engage with a surgeon and learn a bit about the surgery, and then I went under, had general anaesthetic for the first time. Like, for me, it was kind of like I actually enjoyed the experience of that without anxiety, and that meant that the whole thing was actually quite enjoyable. Like, I documented it as I was going along, and that made it a bit of a game and a bit of fun, and just gave me some enjoyment out of the whole process rather than being stressed about it. And I think then, therefore, not having the anxiety around it means you just feel good about the whole thing. And I know that many others can be scared of the whole thing. And what you often see on a lot of the hip replacement groups and that kind of stuff is most people who've had a hip replacement are like, when people are scared of it, to have the mindset of just do it. Obviously, listen to your surgeon, everyone's different, all the rest of it, you know, you've got to make your own judgment, and it's not without risk. But I think the benefits for a lot of people are outweighing the cons. Yeah, so I just think having that positive mindset can just really help. I found a study that showed that it helps with recovery in a wide range of different ailments. So, I mean, look at it this way, right? If you can imagine, if you wrote down on a piece of paper all the things you've ever worried about in life, let's say you wrote 2 A4 pages of them, and then you put a little tick next to all of the things that you worried about that actually happened, you probably find it's actually not that many things on your list happen that were negative that you were worried about. So I think don't worry about things. I mean, it's normal to think about things that could be potential risks and worry about them. It's natural and normal, but just remember that most of the things that you worry about in life don't end up happening. So kind of like reserve that emotion for when they happen, and try to observe yourself. You know, try and be stoic and observe yourself feeling that emotion, and just try to reflect on it using your brain. And don't predict the future based upon if you're having a bad day. Don't predict the future when you're having a bad day, because you'll fill in the blanks with predictions that are negative, and that won't make you feel good. But yeah, I think my mindset has stayed pretty positive all the way through. It's kept it the whole way through, and it's made me enjoy the process rather than dislike it, and I think that's been important to my recovery. So I'd recommend you try and do that. yourself, have a growth mindset. How has your diet contributed to recovery? It's probably important. I'd say there's probably 20 things that contribute to a recovery by a little bit, and if you do all of them right, it makes it, you know, it adds up to be a lot. So I think sleep, diet, routine, mindset, and sticking with the rehab and the prehab exercises are probably the most important. So I supplemented things like creatine and collagen, type 1 and type 2, informed sport ones, because I compete. And I think that those things helped, but they probably helped by like 1% or 2. They weren't like, oh, that was the thing that made me recover, was that one thing. Yeah, I think it's doing a lot of things. So get that diet right. Just remember, sleep is everything. If you're getting poor sleep, you're not going to recover. I've learned that in powerlifting. If I get bad sleep, it affects my strength, and my strength is basically how my body recovers. I got one of these, like a Whoop wristband, which has been quite good to see how my sleep has been going, and it's helped me optimize for that. I'm not affiliated with Whoop, by the way. I only got it about the 6-week point. Are there any exercises, sorry if there's wind, by the way, are there any exercises or movements that you are still avoiding? Yeah, so with the posterior approach, they dislocate you. If you imagine this is your hip joint, right? If I grabbed my fist like this, how would I try and get my fist out of that joint? You'd kind of position it like this, wouldn't you? And then, or sorry, like this, and then you'd try and pop it out like that. Yeah, if it was stuck like that. And basically what they do in the surgery is, this is your hip, this is your pelvis, this is your body. They kind of internally rotate the knee and pop it out like that. So the surgeon is very mindful of any movements that do that. So if you imagine you're in a squat and you squat it down, and then as you're pushing up, you bend that knee in, that's going to be real dangerous for you. So I'm trying to avoid those kinds of movements. He's less concerned of when my knees are sticking out when I'm doing the movement, with the posterior approach at least. But other than that, I'm basically doing most things. Like, there's really not that much difference to pre-surgery. In fact, what's been quite nice is there's been some things that I've been able to do now post-surgery that I couldn't do pre-surgery. Like, some of the weights I'm doing on the Romanian deadlifts are actually getting heavier than what I was doing before the surgery due to pain. So I don't mean pain like I'm at the gym and I'm doing a squat and I get pain. I don't mean it like that. I mean, I'd be at the gym, I'd do a heavy set squats, and then in the week afterwards, I'd have much more soreness in the joint. It gets like inflamed as a result of what you're doing. And so on squat, I wasn't going heavier than 140, and on Romanian kilograms, and on deadlift, I wasn't going heavier than about 120. And last week, I went up to 130 on the Romanian deadlift. So already ahead of that. Already much more comfortable walking for long distances. When I'm standing up, I'm not getting soreness in my hip anymore, which was obviously before I had the surgery was an absolute nightmare. I'm not getting any pain or discomfort when sleeping that's waking me up if I've done a heavy session, which is something that would happen before. It's yeah, there's lots of little things like that where I'm like, this is already better. This is already better today, right now, than before the surgery, and I'm only like a few months in. Like even from the 2-month point, I had that. So that's been real nice. I'm skipping ahead on some of these questions, but yeah, you get the idea. What feedback did you receive from the physiotherapist? Well, at the 2.5 month point, I went in to see him, and I showed him my deadlifts and my squat, and he just looked at me and went, "Andrew, you're a model recovery. Well done. You've done everything right. Keep doing what you're doing. Please leave us a review. Catch you later." Like, that's it. Don't need to see him again unless it's still there if I want it. Like, I can, if I had a problem, I could call them up and go and see them, but I don't have to anymore, which is great, because like psychologically, I was trying to have a good recovery. Do you know what I mean? I was thinking to myself, I'm gonna have the best damn recovery that anyone's had. Like, I got competitive with it, and I think that helped. And I think he was happy. Happy, had good adherence, would carry on doing the strengthening exercises. So yeah, I'm not having any more physiotherapy at this point. It's just carry on doing what I'm doing with my coach, really. Role in sleep in the recovery, I've talked to you about that. Surgery impacted daily life and routines. Talked a bit about that. What equipment or tools have been most useful in your rehabilitation? It was really nice having, I've got like a little stepper bench in my gym, and that is an amazing piece of equipment because it's like, it allowed me to do box squats. So I'm squatting by sitting onto it, and I know I'm not going to go any lower than that. So it was like a nice safe way that I could progress the squat movement as in like the early weeks or months of my rehab. Amy, my wife, does competitive pole dancing, like so not the, you know, in competitions with music, 2 poles, does a routine a bit like gymnastics. So she has a pole in our house, and I was using that to hold and do squats, and that was real great. Like that, I used that all throughout, and even when I bought a little balance ball to stand on, which is a good thing to do at week 6 onwards, having that pole there to kind of balance on and let go of was really useful. Resistance bands was really useful. You know, having a dumbbell that's at home that's an appropriate weight, so as you start to progress to do from body weight stuff to doing a lightweight, that was really useful. Those are probably the main things that added value to me. What goals are you setting for the next 3 months? Oh, that's a good question. I'd like to get my squat above the 140 maybe, and not with a safety bar over the next 3 months. Deadlift, I'm happy with where it is, but I would progress it, but it's probably that squat is where my focus is going to be. And on the bench press, it'd be nice to be able to compete again next year in British bench press championships. So that's, my bench hasn't really gone backwards at all. In fact, I did a personal best for reps the other day with more in the tank easily. So I think, yeah, those are my goals. Keep it nice and simple. Those are my goals. Have you experienced any setbacks? I've told you about that with the groin. That was the main one. That's the only setback I've really had. How does your progress compare with your expectations when you first had the surgery? That's a good question. I basically mentally cleared like 3+ months in my head. Like I didn't know, before I was going into the surgery, I didn't know, when am I going to feel comfortable working again? When am I going to feel comfortable walking anywhere, going to an event? What about going on a plane or something like that? You know, when am I going to feel normal to the point where I don't need to worry about my hip anymore? And so I kind of had mentally cleared a lot of time post-surgery where I hadn't committed myself in that time. I was avoiding scheduling things on weekends and that kind of stuff. And what's turned out is the recovery's just been much, much faster than I realised. Like I went back to work after 2 days off. 2 days off and a weekend, went back to work, and I thought I was going to need weeks. So that was great. That let me get ahead of things. Actually really helped in, you know, I run a business, so it was really useful because I was able to progress some sales opportunities that ended up coming good. And I don't know if they would have done if I hadn't put the work in. So that was good. Yeah, so I think it was good to do that, and it meant that when I was going into the surgery, it kind of felt a little bit like a holiday in a weird way, because I'd kind of cleared that time. It felt nice, like it was like low pressure, and then anything I wanted to do was because I wanted to do it. And I still ended up doing a lot on reflection, because that's just the kind of person I am, but I didn't have to, so everything was like a win. I set the bar really low, basically. So I would recommend you do the same. Set the bar really low, don't overcommit yourself post the surgery, but be prepared to like push yourself at a pace that you feel comfortable with, and move that bar up at a pace that is comfortable. How long did it feel to get to feel stable and confident on your feet again? Well, they get you walking straight away, but you're not, you know, you're having to use crutches still. I went down to 1 crutch within like a day or 2. I think I came down and made breakfast and switched to 1 crutch because I just found it easier to use this hand whilst using this one to walk around. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you're confident with your body. Like I felt I've got good body awareness and I could do it. I think if you were maybe not strong, you might struggle with that a little bit. So just trust your own physiology a little bit there. But yeah, like a week or 2, I was then getting rid of the crutch, and then I had the groin pain. But then after that, I was just walking around as normal. You know, maybe 3 to 4 weeks out, I was walking around and I felt amazed, like, oh my God, I'm walking around town. I power walked. I went to the glasses shop, the opticians, and I needed to get Wi-Fi, and there wasn't any Wi-Fi signal in town. I power walked to Nando's. But I was power walking going, I'm like 3-4 weeks after surgery and I'm power walking here to Nando's. What's going on? So yeah, so that's when I felt stable again. What types of stretches and mobility have been beneficial? I think, you know, lifting your knee and pulling it towards yourself, but doing it in a way where you try not to put pressure on you. I think that's quite good because it gets tight in the glute where you do it. I've been trying to do things like, there was a lot of stuff that I would do pre-operation that I would favour my left side. Like if I was to put down the cat food bowl on the floor, I'd favour my left side because mobility there and not in my right one. So I've been trying to balance out things I would do on one side more than the other. So when I put the cat bowl down, I really make an effort now to be upright and kind of put it down with good form. I know that sounds real bizarre, but I've been trying to do that kind of stuff with all the little things you do day to day, so that I don't end up building compensations into my way of moving, which I'm hoping will just, well, it has been over time. It's just been like, it starts as something I'm having to consciously do, and then over time it's not a problem. But you find you do little things. Like I always used to stand on my left leg and then have my right leg bent, because that used to take some pressure off my hip when I had soreness there. And I find myself going back to that old habit way of doing things. So you've got to be really mindful that these compensations that you've built in, you're just going to have to break them gradually over time with repetition. And even now I'm trying to break some of those. What else we got here? Lifting form and technique. Oh yeah, that's a good question actually. So it's, how has your hip replacement affected your lifting form or technique? Well, when I used to squat, let me move this table. So imagine you got a squat, right? And imagine I can't bend this hip more than a certain amount, okay? So if I'm trying to squat like that, and I can't go any further to get down because this hip is locked now. If I want to carry on getting down, I can't achieve it by getting more hip angle here. So what you've got to do is you achieve it. Oh, I'm losing that. You achieve it by skewing, and that lets you keep this hip angle up, and then you end up compensating and going down on one side. And I used to do that on squats. I used to do that on deadlifts, and I think it, ironically as well, because you're doing that, you're also putting a lot more pressure and weight through that hip when you're doing it with a heavy squat, and that made the condition worse, I think, over time. So what's been nice post surgery, and you can see this if you watch any of the videos on my Instagram in my highlights reels, you can see the deadlift's real nice. Like my squat is like even, it's like balanced, like my hips aren't shifting to one side on squats or deadlifts, and I'm like, it feels easier than it's ever felt before in a weird way. But I'm having to consciously remember not to go back into the old ways again. So it's been post hip surgery, it's really helped. And I thought, yes, this is what I want. This is gonna really help me to get more enjoyment out of my training. What do I wish I'd known before going into the surgery? I don't know really. I did quite a lot of research, so I think what I was trying to get before going into the surgery was examples of people like me. I wanted information from people that were like athletes or into sports, and seeing what pace they got back into doing their training. And though I looked for that information, I didn't get very satisfying answers, which is one of the reasons I wanted to create the blog article, create videos like this, because that's what I was looking for, basically. So hopefully putting out some of this information's helped. I've had a few people email me actually, which has been really nice, who were looking for things like hip replacement, rapid recovery. If you're watching this, you know who you are. But that makes it worthwhile. When the information you put out because you think maybe people are like this, and then they do, and I found that rewarding. Have you made any changes to your warm-up or cool-down routines? No, not really. I maybe am making an effort to just be mindful of any mobility issues I might have, but I had to do that with the hip anyway. So before I'd squat, I'd have to stretch a bit and that kind of stuff. So no, I wouldn't say I've had to make any modifications. How have your energy levels been during recovery? Have they improved? They've just been good the whole way through. I think the mindset has helped with that. What support from friends, family, or the community has been most helpful? I would say from the community, it's been the information. I've really valued that. Information is power and helps set expectations and helps you to be prepared. In terms of family, like I've quite enjoyed people's being interested in the whole thing and asking me how I am, and that's more of a motivation standpoint, I would say, than anything. But you know, it's just nice, like some friends came over rather than us going out, so I got to still have some social time in the early days of recovery. That was really nice. Are there any misconceptions about hip replacement recovery that you'd like to address? I think a lot of people say that the anterior approach, where they go in the front for the hip replacement, is so essential for people who recommend that, because if you go the posterior approach, your recovery is going to be a nightmare and you're going to struggle to get back on your feet and blah, 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 blah. And though I think that there can be some truth in the fact that if you go in that front way, you know, there's certain ranges of motion that become safer, etc., etc. My recovery's been pretty fast, and I had the posterior approach, and all of my concerns about will I be able to return to squatting and deadlifting because of that, because they have to separate a muscle, you know, when they go in, it's quite a big cut. I thought that's going to stop me getting back into my lifting and all that sort of stuff, but it hasn't. So I think maybe some of these treatments, maybe they're overweighted for that benefit, and I would just say, like, the most important thing is having a good surgeon. There's, you know, have a look at their revision rates and that kind of stuff. I also don't think, you know, out of all the surgeries, everyone thinks a hip replacement's a real big deal, and it is a big deal, right? But I think if someone tells you it's a big deal and then you go into the surgery, you think, oh my God, it's a big deal. And I also just think it's also actually not that big of a deal. Like, if you've had knee surgery where you've had like a ligament replaced, or, you know, an ATFL injury on your ankle where you've had like a rupture of a tendon, where you can't put weight on it anymore, I think recovering from that is worse. And people who I know who've recovered from that have just had much worse journeys, yet hip replacement sounds worse. So I would say, like, a hip replacement is made up to be a much bigger thing than it maybe is. I think as well, just another thing to touch on, though, is I'm young. So my hip replacement is an Oxinium one with a 10XLP plastic liner. And they do that because it's very wear resistant and wettable and all the rest of it. But because I'm young, 36, there's a very high likelihood I will need a revision at some point down the line. And I think if you're young and going to have a hip replacement, you're kind of going to have to just accept that that's a risk if you're having it early. But the materials you choose can offset that. And some people go, oh my God, I'm going to need a revision. But I think differently. I feel like if I have my hip replacement young and I'm going to need a revision probably anyway, then isn't it better to also have the revision when you're young? So the younger you have a hip replacement, that revision, you're going to be having it younger, which might improve the success outcomes of that revision. Maybe. Don't hold me to that. I'm not qualified to say that, but that's my mindset of it. So even if I get a revision, you know what? I'm going to live my life. I'm going to do the things I want to do. This hip will degrade over time, get its materials. Hopefully it'll degrade slowly, that I maybe don't need a revision in the end, or if I do, then it's not a big deal. They can maybe just replace some parts. But I'm not going to let that be a big deal. It wasn't a big deal having the hip done. Maybe a revision won't be to either. I'm just going to focus on living my life, because the whole reason I had this done was to improve the quality of life. So if I have it done and then don't do the things I want to do, because, oh, I'm going to power lift, I'm going to wear it down a little bit, what's the point? You know, I might as well just wrap myself in cotton wool and be a potato. How has the recovery process impacted your work or professional life? Well, just how quick it was to get back into things was amazing, and it meant that I could get back into... I enjoy my work, though it can be stressful. I didn't want to be in a position where I wasn't able to do some work and then all of a sudden my email queue backs up, and then though I'm not working and I'm resting, like my mind is just worrying about all the mountain of work I've got to deal with. So really helped me that my recovery was fast and that I was able to get back to doing things at my own pace real quickly. What role did goal setting play in the recovery journey? Really important. Helps you with your mindset. Everything's a game. I'm trying to recover fast, but at the right pace. I'm trying to hit the next goal. And like, it seems like a bad thing, right? You get surgery and you set the bar back of progress right back here. But you actually get to have a personal best every day. Every single day, because, you know, you're doing a little bit heavier than last week, and that's rewarding. You're doing a little bit heavier than last week, and it's almost like resetting that bar low is really rewarding, because you get more micro gains as you go. This is what I talk about when I say having a growth mindset is really important. Yeah, so got to have personal bests every day. So And that mindset has carried me through the whole way. Have you used technology or apps to monitor your progress? One of these. Whoop wristband. There are other manufacturers, obviously, of different wristbands and things. Just help me monitor my sleep, keep me accountable. You know, I know if my sleep suffers, my recovery will suffer. But other than that, not really. Maybe WhatsApp to speak to my coach to set my program. That's probably the main thing. And record my weights. I have an app I record all my weights in. What was the most helpful advice you received from medical professionals? When you're ambitious, you want to get to things real fast. So you're one of two people. You're either, oh, I can't do anything, I need to sit on a sofa and not do everything any day because I've just had a hip replacement, which is tempting, but it's going to hurt your recovery, right? You need to be active when you come out of a hip replacement because you've got to build the muscle back up. But you can go to the other side of things, which is where I would be at, where you push yourself so fast you injure yourself and you have a setback and you go backwards, and that's real bad too. So you've got to try to be in the middle of those two extremes. And the visits I had, post-surgery visits with the hip surgeon and the physio, were really valuable to me to just say to them, hey, look, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm trying to do, like, watch my squat, have a look at my balance work, how fast do you think I can go from this position? Same with my coach. Setting a program that's not going too fast but still challenging. That's the most valuable thing, because it's a third-party person evaluating you, saying this is about the pace you should go. So it stopped me running off too quick. But again, if you're somebody that's like, oh, I want to sit on the sofa and not do anything because I had a hip replacement, they will be telling you to do more. And you need to listen to them when they tell you to do more. So how did you handle the psychological aspects of recovery, such as frustration and impatience? Well, I set my expectations low. So I wasn't frustrated or impatient because my pace was faster than where I set the expectations. So I imagine it like like a bell curve. If you've got like, here is everybody's recovery and here's the average, and you can see where the outliers are, like how much does the top 1% and the bottom 1%, how long do their recovery take? And I kind of mentally went, right, what's the bottom 25%? Maybe set my bar there. And it was just a subjective judgment, but that was what was going through my mind. And then hopefully, because I'm fit, going into it strong and whatever, my recovery will be better than that. So I set my expectation at a manageable level, so the bar I could easily meet. Because if you set the bar too high and then you don't meet it, you're failing. Whereas if you set the bar lower and you're meeting, you're succeeding. And then you can move the bar. Have you seen any changes in... Oh, that's that one. How do you balance rest and recovery to optimize... Rest and activity to optimize recovery? Well, that's why I train 3 days a week. I like to have a day gap between my sessions. I like to make sure I sleep beforehand. I train to maximize volume. So I'm training at a RPE, I mentioned earlier, that's manageable. And I'm balancing how heavy I go, and we're adjusting every week with my coach. That's what I've always done, and it applies to this the same, but the bar's just lower. What would you say about someone who's worried about the pain or difficulty of recovery? People do experience pain out of recovery, but from what I've experienced, and my experience may be an outlier, so bear that in mind, it just wasn't that bad. So all of this stress you've got around it might not be that bad. And if you think it's going to be bad and you're dwelling on it being bad, it probably will be bad, because your confirmation bias means you'll seek out the bad stuff because you thought it was going to be bad. Whereas if you're thinking it's going to be good, you seek out, oh, it was good. And then you remember all the things that were good and not the things that were bad. So confirmation bias makes you have a good time. So use your biases in your favor and trust that you'll have a good recovery. But speak to your surgeon, be well informed. There are risks. Everyone's circumstances are different. Some people have more risks than others. Sometimes there's complications that mean you're going to have a different time. You're going to have to make a subjective judgment. But 3 months isn't that long of a time to get like a significant part of recovery. And if in 3 months you can already be better than you were for years before the surgery, like, to me at least, it was a no-brainer. You'll have to make your own decision on that. How has your overall fitness level changed since surgery? Hasn't really. Still as fit, still as strong. I've not lost any muscle mass on my legs because I was able to keep at it. I saw a study that showed that if you're a trained athlete and you just stop, completely stop, how much do you regress? How long does it take you to get back to where you stopped? And it turns out that for a young person at least, let's say every 2 weeks that you completely cease training will take you 1 week to get back. But if you can do a bit of exercise, a bit of resistance, rather than go backwards, you flatline. That's study, that's general. Obviously, it's a bit different if you had surgery and you've had a cut through your leg, but just remember that, because anything that you can do is just stopping that regression. And I think with me, because I was doing real on top of all of the rehab and everything, I think that what's happened is I basically flatlined rather than went backwards. So I've not attenuated muscle mass or anything like that. So yeah, fitness is still pretty good. Volume I'm doing at the session is pretty good. What signs do you look for to determine if you're pushing yourself too hard or not enough? RPE again, that's the main thing. How many more reps could I have done? Keep it that I could have done maybe 3 more, 2 more, something like that. Did you make any significant adjustments to your lifting technique post-surgery? I've kind of touched on this, but not to this level. But yeah, using a box squat so that, like, if you did fail, you just sit on the box and you're not going to accidentally go too deep. Or like just building up the weight slowly and gradually, or just like experimenting and adding range of motion a little bit before you then add weight, and add a bit of range of motion, then add a bit of weight. Being incremental with it is the best way. My surgeon told me, like, generally if you're going to get a dislocation event, you kind of feel that it's going to go before it goes. That's what he said, unless it obviously goes real fast. Don't know if that's different for everybody, but my thoughts there were, okay, well, if I can do something at a weight where I feel like I'm under control, if I was to feel it going, I could do something about it. Like I could dump the weight back, or, you know, try and focus on opening that hip up again so it gets out of a position of risk. That's just me. Speak to your surgeon definitely about that one. But it made me think that I know that if I progress it at this pace, I'm balancing the risk of that against the fact that I need to progress, because that's the whole point. What else? How did you manage the transition from hospital to home recovery? Well, it's mad really, because you have the surgery, you stay in hospital 1 night, and the very next day they discharge you. So that was it, you know. And the next day I walked down, like, because it was a tough night for Amy that night, the first night where I was at home, and I snuck out of the room and I went downstairs and I made myself breakfast, and I was like, you know what, this is going to be okay. What else we got here? How do you mentally prepare yourself before each workout session now? I don't, it's just routine. My mindset is I'm going. So there's no mental preparation, because that's just what I'm doing. That's just normal. And it has been normal since before the training too. Have you noticed any changes in your non-operative hip or leg? No? No, not really. What is the most common question people ask you about your recovery? Just how I am, really. How are you doing? You know, people want to know what the progress has been and whether you're doing okay. And, you know, it's coming from a place of love, I would say, really. Maybe that's just because it's been my friends asking. Some people have asked things like, how are you sleeping, or stuff like that. But I think because I answered a lot of questions on my blog post, yeah, it's mostly generally about myself, like if I've not put out an update for a little while. What else we got here? Oh, we're nearly through this list, you know. What did you do to stay motivated on days when you felt particularly tough? Yeah, so some days, most days have been okay, but we all get it, where we get days where we don't feel so good. The main thing I do on the days I don't feel so good is not predict the future when I'm feeling negative, and I try and give myself tasks that I know I can do. Like, I have a rule that I'm allowed to bail on going to the gym, but I have to, like, walk through the door mentally. So sometimes I'll have it that I'll get into my gym kit. Like, let's say I feel unwell or something. I will still get into my gym kit, I'll go downstairs, I'll have breakfast, I'll have a coffee or whatever, like I would for the gym. And then almost like if I'm going to go out the door, and then if I'm still like, look, no, actually I'm still too unwell to do this, I've done everything possible to make nothing other than going to the gym because I feel unwell be a barrier. Have you been unexpected benefits or positives from the surgery? I think I've covered that. What role has hydration played in your recovery, and have you adjusted your intake? Yes, I have. My wife criticizes me saying I don't drink enough water, so I do try to drink more. I could probably drink more. Main thing as well is like no alcohol. I didn't have any alcohol at all for the first 6 weeks, and I've been, even when I have, I've been really trying to not drink too much. Alcohol's really bad for recovery, it's bad for sleep, it's bad for inflammation, it's just detrimental to your recovery. So, you know, if you're going to have a hip replacement, don't drink alcohol. Definitely not in the first 6 weeks. It's going to mess you up. Don't do it. I know you'll be tempted. Don't do it. Have you experienced any numbness, stiffness, or lingering effects around the incision site? This is a good one to talk about, actually. It's good to massage that incision point because you get adhesions. Nobody told me this, actually. I found this out from my research. So after, like, I can't remember how many weeks now, look it up, but it's something like after the first 6 weeks or a month, you can start to massage that with moisturizer, and you kind of can be heavier handed than you think with it. And I had like a pop. I thought, what's that? Is that a good thing? And apparently it's like the skin adhesion coming off, which is a good thing, because if it adheres, it gets stronger, that adherence, over time, and then your scar almost looks like it sticks to something underneath. So that was really useful. No, actually I do have numbness as well. There's like a strip. So if you imagine my bum cheek, and I got the incision down the bum cheek, there's a strip of about an inch underneath it, which is completely numb if I press it. Just on the skin, not underneath the skin, just the skin. So I wonder, it's only 3 months post-surgery. I've heard case studies that other people's have improved. So I wonder, will mine improve? Will I ever get feeling in that skin again? I don't know. Is it a problem? No. I don't care if I never get feeling there again. It was worth it. Any others? Anything I would do differently is the last question. Anything I would do differently? I would be more aware that the groin is something that's really easy to get that strain in. And I would have, when I went crutchless for the first time, I would have avoided doing things that involve separating my legs a lot and pivoting on those separated legs. Just for the first 3 weeks, maybe. Because I think it was me walking around like nothing was anything that made that groin get injured, that set me back a week. And I think if I'd have been a little bit more reserved on that, I wouldn't have had that week setback. But you know what? It was only a week setback, so not the worst thing in the world. And that's my list, really. There's a few duplicate questions on there I don't think I need to answer. That's the 3 month point for me. I do have a blog article on andrewleeward.com that contains my whole journey, right from the beginning, before the surgery, all the way through. Key milestones, 1 week point, 2 month point, 3 month point, examples of exercises, what kinds of training routine I was doing, frequently asked questions, that kind of stuff. So if you haven't read that before, check it out, andrewleeward.com. Just go to the blog, you'll find it. If you have any questions, my contact information is on there too. Just drop me an email, or drop the email that's on there, a list will get forwarded to me. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And you know, if you ask a good one, I'll add it to the bottom of the blog article too. And if I'm posting this on social media and you're seeing this video on social media, ask the question in the comments and I'll answer. And parting words, really, if you're about to have the hip replacement, good luck. Now you're about to go on a journey, try to enjoy it. We can't control certain events in our lives, but we can control how we choose to react to them. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. Thank you.